Have you ever felt that sharing everything with your family only made things harder as you got older? Turning 70 can feel like your life is no longer yours. Everyone wants to judge your money, health, and feelings. Here's the truth. Growing older doesn't mean surrendering your privacy. In fact, keeping certain things to yourself can be one of the healthiest, wisest things you ever do. Not because you're hiding, but because you're protecting what's sacred. You've lived through enough to know that not all love is wise, and not all questions deserve an answer. Sometimes your silence isn't distance, it's dignity. And no one talks about this. Most advice to older people focuses on sharing everything, letting others help, or being transparent for your family's sake. But what if I told you there are certain things you shouldn't say, certain secrets that, if kept quietly to yourself, can protect your freedom, your peace of mind, and even your relationships? In this video, we're going to walk through 7 powerful secrets that seniors over 70 often keep on purpose. These aren't about deception. These are about self-respect. They're about understanding the fine line between connection and control, and learning how to hold on to the life you still get to live, even if your children or grandchildren mean well. So if you're over 70 or even close, and sometimes wonder whether you're allowed to keep things to yourself, this one's for you. You're not selfish. You're not being difficult. You're just finally wise enough to know that some things are yours alone to carry. Let's begin. Secret 1, health fears. You don't have to tell them every detail about what's going on with your body. Not because you're trying to hide something serious, but because constant updates about your aches, your test results, or your blood pressure readings can sometimes do more harm than good. It's easy to forget, but once you reach a certain age, even a simple checkup can become a family emergency in their eyes. You mention a little dizziness, and suddenly your daughter wants to move you in. You say your knees ache when it rains, and suddenly your grandson's Googling nursing homes. You were just making conversation, but to them it's a red flag, a signal that you're slipping. When in truth, you might feel fine, but they hear panic. And that panic turns into decisions, pressure, or even pity you never asked for. There's a quiet strength in monitoring your health on your terms. Yes, share the important things when you need help, but it's also okay to keep smaller concerns to yourself while you work through them, observe, and decide. Because here's the psychological truth. When older adults constantly report health concerns, especially minor ones, it often reinforces a role reversal dynamic, where you become the cared for and your children step in as the decision makers. Once that happens, it's hard to reverse. Instead, hold that space. Let your family see your strength, your calm, your capacity to manage. You've taken care of others. All your life, you still know how to care for yourself. That doesn't disappear just because your birthday candles say otherwise. Take Margaret, for example. She's 78, lives alone, and recently started having some minor vision issues at night. Instead of calling her kids in a panic, she kept a journal, noticed patterns, changed her evening lighting, and made a private appointment with her doctor. Turned out to be mild and manageable. But had she said something too early, her son would have been at her door with brochures and worry in his eyes. She didn't lie. She just delayed the conversation until she had clarity. And that gave her the power, not the panic. You have a right to your own pace. You have a right to say, I'm looking into it, without explaining every symptom. And sometimes the wisest thing you can say about your health is nothing at all. Secret 2, financial choices. Not every dollar in your account needs to be a family discussion. When you're past 70, your money becomes more than just numbers. It becomes a symbol to your children, a symbol of inheritance, responsibility, maybe even entitlement. And that's why some of your most peaceful decisions will be the ones you make quietly. Maybe you want to buy yourself a better chair for your back, or give a small gift to an old friend who helped you through a tough time. Maybe you're thinking of donating to a cause you care about deeply, something your family doesn't understand or value the same way. The moment money is mentioned, the questions begin. Are you sure that's a good idea? Shouldn't you save that? What if you live longer than expected? It comes from love, but it often ends in control. There's a kind of freedom that older people need to protect, and that includes financial autonomy. You've earned that. You've managed bills, budgets, sacrifices, and crises. You don't suddenly forget how to think just because you turn 75. There's also psychology at play here. In many families, once an elder opens the books, shows the accounts, the will, the future plans, it unintentionally shifts the relationship dynamic. Children begin thinking in terms of what's coming to me, even if they don't say it out loud. And from there, every spending decision you make can seem like you're cutting into their future. That's a dangerous frame, because it turns your money into their concern and your generosity into their frustration. Let me share what one man, Leonard, 82, did. He had 3 grown children, all doing well enough on their own. But once they found out he was giving monthly support to a local women's shelter without telling anyone, it turned into a family debate. "Why are you wasting your savings?" one asked. But Leonard knew what that shelter meant. He grew up watching his mother live through silent pain, with no help, no escape. That donation wasn't just about money. It was about memory, healing, and doing what he felt was right. He didn't argue. He just smiled, listened, and kept giving, privately, quietly. Because his conscience didn't need their approval, and neither does yours. We live in a time when older adults are often treated like they need permission to live freely. But what you spend, give, or keep, that's still your choice. Keep that freedom sacred, because no matter what they think, this is still your life, and you've got the right to steer it quietly, wisely, and without apology. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Secret 3: emotional boundaries. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for your family is to keep certain feelings to yourself. After 70, emotions tend to run deeper. Regrets surface more often. Memories stir stronger. And loneliness, though quiet, can feel heavy. But not every emotion needs to be unpacked at the family dinner table. Not every wound needs to be explained. Because sometimes when you try to share too much, it backfires. You open up, and instead of support, you get solutions. Instead of empathy, you get confusion. And that makes you feel even more alone. Many older adults carry deep griefs. Losing friends, feeling forgotten, watching the world move on. But when you try to express it, your children might say things like, "Just stay positive," or "You worry too much." They're trying to help, but they don't always know how. This is where emotional boundaries come in. It's not about bottling things up. It's about knowing what to share and when. It's about protecting your emotional energy and choosing safe places to process what you're feeling. Maybe you journal it out. Maybe you speak to a friend who truly understands. Maybe you simply sit with your own heart, quietly accepting what no one else can fix. Emotional independence is just as vital as financial independence. Because when you start relying too heavily on family to understand every twist and turn of your heart, you open yourself to hurt they never intended, but still cause. Take Margaret, 76, for example. She missed her late husband every night, every quiet dinner, every walk home alone. So one day she told her daughter, "I wish I could hear his voice again." Her daughter, startled, replied, "Don't talk like that. You're still here. You've got so much life left." Meant to uplift, yes, but it shut Margaret down. She never brought it up again. So Margaret wrote letters to her husband every morning instead. Letters he'd never read, but she needed to write. Because the release mattered more than the response. At this age, you start learning the difference between being hurt and being healed. And often, healing doesn't require someone else's ears. It just needs your own truth, held gently, privately, and without judgment. So remember, it's okay to keep certain emotional truths to yourself. Not because they're shameful, but because they're sacred. And you deserve a space where they can breathe without being fixed, dismissed, or misunderstood. Secret 4: end-of-life preferences. Talking about the end makes people uncomfortable, but thinking about it alone can bring peace. When you're over 70, thoughts about mortality visit you more often. Not out of fear, but out of realism. You've lived through enough to know that time is no longer endless. You've seen others go quickly, unexpectedly, or slowly, painfully. And you've likely asked yourself, how do I want mine to go? Here's the truth, knowing what you want is empowering. But announcing those wishes too early, especially to your children, can sometimes cause more harm than help. You may have already decided that you don't want aggressive treatment if you get very sick. You may want a simple farewell, not a big expensive funeral. You may prefer peace at home rather than machines in a hospital. But your children might not be ready to hear that. They may fight your wishes. They may plead. They may panic. Because to them, this conversation isn't about your autonomy, it's about their loss. That's why some things are better planned quietly and securely before they're ever discussed. Write your preferences down. Have them legally documented if needed. Choose a trusted friend or professional to keep that information safe. And when the time is right, share it gently, but only with those who can handle it. Take Gerald, 81. He didn't want his kids arguing over his final days, so he prepared everything in advance. Living will, DNR, even his favorite old gospel hymn for the service. But he didn't overwhelm his family with it. He told them once softly and let the documents speak when the time came. And when it did, there was no fighting, just peace. Because he had made the hard decisions, so they wouldn't have to. Keeping end-of-life preferences private, at least for a while, isn't secrecy, it's serenity. You're not hiding it out of fear. You're protecting others from emotional overload. You're giving yourself the dignity of making those choices clearly, cleanly, and calmly. And most importantly, you're setting yourself free. Because there's something powerful in knowing that when the time comes, your voice will still be heard through every detail you've already prepared with care. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Secret 5, financial buffers you keep for yourself. There's something no one likes to talk about after 70, money. Not how much you have, but how much you should keep to yourself. At this stage, many older adults feel pressured to disclose every financial detail to their family. Some even feel guilty for not handing over control or for holding back just in case. But let me tell you, holding back isn't selfish. It's wise. Because here's the reality, life still surprises you in your 70s, 80s, and even 90s. Unexpected health costs, home repairs, a friend in need, or even something beautiful, like the sudden desire to travel, take a class, or support a cause close to your heart. And you can't do any of that if every dollar's monitored, questioned, or already promised to someone else. You don't need to lie or hide, but you do have the right to set aside a private fund, no matter how small, that gives you freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to give, freedom to say yes or no without needing anyone's approval. Think about Carol, 75. She had 3 grown children, all respectful and kind. But every time she shared her saving situation, they started advising her, sometimes too strongly, about what she should or shouldn't spend on. One day, she quietly opened a small separate account. She called it her heart fund. She never used it for groceries or bills, only for things that made her soul feel alive. A trip to a lake she hadn't seen since childhood, gifts to a struggling neighbor, a weekend at a writing retreat. None of it was reckless, but all of it was hers. And that made a difference, not in the size of her estate, but in the size of her smile. This is the kind of boundary that often goes unspoken, but deeply respected once people understand it. But even if they don't, you don't owe anyone an explanation for building a little safety net for your own spirit. Because sometimes the most meaningful generosity you can offer isn't about giving everything to others. It's about keeping just enough for yourself to feel whole, steady, and quietly strong. The people who love you want to see you safe, but they also need to see you happy. And your silent savings may just be the bridge between the two. Secret 6, your true emotional low points. There's a kind of silence that grows heavier with age, not because there's nothing to say, but because some things feel too raw, too personal, or simply too misunderstood. One of those things, your real low points, the dark days. The nights you sat at the edge of your bed and quietly asked, "Is this it?" After 70, these moments don't always come from trauma or chaos. Sometimes they creep in slowly, from loneliness, from invisible pain, from watching friends disappear one by one, or simply from waking up and not recognizing the face in the mirror as your own anymore. And yet most older people don't talk about this. Not to their children, not to their spouse, not even to close friends. Why? Because we're supposed to be the strong ones, the wise ones, the steady presence everyone else leans on. But here's the truth, even the strongest need space to fall apart now and then. You don't have to share every breakdown. You don't owe anyone a detailed explanation of why a certain day hit harder than others, or why a specific date, maybe the anniversary of a loss, still brings tears to your eyes when no one's looking. Keeping some of that sorrow private isn't weakness. It's sacred. Because when you're older, your pain becomes layered. It isn't always something people in their 30s or 40s can grasp. And explaining it might only invite confusion, pity, or worse, dismissiveness. You're not being dishonest by keeping some emotional wounds to yourself. You're being protective of your inner world. Take Henry, for example. He's 81 now, kind and generous to everyone around him. But every year for 1 week in August, he becomes unusually quiet. He visits the coast alone. No one in his family knows why. They've asked, but he always shrugs it off. What they don't know is that he lost his younger brother to suicide on a summer night when they were both teenagers. It changed his entire view of life, but not in ways that are easy to put into words. And every year he honors it, alone in silence. That kind of grief isn't a burden he wants to hand off. It's a part of his private strength, and he has every right to keep it that way. So if there are days when you feel low, even if you can't explain why, or you can but choose not to, that doesn't make you broken. It makes you human, and it means you've lived. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Secret 7, your backup financial plan. There's something older folks know that younger generations often don't understand, yet money isn't just about numbers. It's about security, freedom, and peace of mind. That's why after 70, your backup financial plan is something you should keep quietly to yourself. You might have a small emergency fund tucked away, a side investment no one knows about, or an insurance policy you rarely mention. And that's okay. In fact, it's wise. Because once you reach a certain age, you begin to see the difference between helping out and being taken advantage of. It's not always intentional. Sometimes adult children ask for help because they're overwhelmed, not realizing their request adds weight to your shoulders. Sometimes they assume you'll be there to cover a bill, fund a dream, or provide a safety net without asking what it might cost you emotionally, mentally, or financially. So you learn to smile, support where you can, but protect what you need to survive and stay independent. And that's where your secret plan comes in. Maybe it's a savings account that's never been mentioned at the dinner table. Maybe it's a rental property you quietly kept in your name. Or maybe it's something as simple as choosing not to co-sign a loan, even when it would have been easier to say yes than to explain your no. Whatever it is, it's yours, and it should remain yours. You don't have to justify your need for security. You've spent a lifetime working, saving, budgeting, and learning. You've been through recessions, inflation, family emergencies, and unexpected medical bills. You know how fast things can change. And when you've reached the point where the mailbox brings more bills than birthday cards, where one hospital visit can cost more than your car, you start to understand that having a private plan is not selfish. It's survival. Think about Barbara, a 76-year-old widow who lives modestly in a small apartment. Her children think she just makes ends meet. But what they don't know is that she wisely sold her larger home years ago, invested the proceeds in low-risk bonds, and set up a trust for herself. She doesn't talk about it. She doesn't flaunt it, but she sleeps better at night. And that's what matters. There's peace in knowing that you're not dependent, that if something were to happen, a roof repair, a medical treatment, or even just the desire to move closer to a friend, you wouldn't have to ask for permission or wait for someone else to agree. So yes, keep your backup plan. Don't announce it. Don't explain it. Just protect it. It may not be something you talk about out loud, but it's one of the smartest secrets you'll ever keep. Final thoughts. After 70, you start to realize something most people overlook when they're younger. Life doesn't get simpler, it just gets quieter. And in that quiet, your choices matter more than ever. What you reveal, what you hold back, what you protect. These aren't just habits, they're survival skills. Keeping a few things to yourself doesn't mean you don't trust your family. It means you trust your wisdom. You've lived long enough to know that boundaries protect relationships, and that peace, dignity, and independence are worth preserving. Each of these 7 secrets isn't about hiding. It's about honoring the life you've built. It's about staying strong in your own story, even as others write theirs. And it's about giving yourself permission to live these later years on your terms with clarity, courage, and quiet strength. So, what about you? Which of these 7 did you already quietly keep to yourself? And which one felt like something you've been waiting to hear someone finally say out loud? Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.